Good Friday morning. Gee, I already started this thing and I botched it. Today is the calling of the apostles. Oh, Lord, I just did a whole bunch of it and I forgot to press the button. Leave it to me. Anyways, the calling of the 12, okay? And this is extremely important because when Christ calls the 12, he's the new Moses. And he climbs the mountain. I'll read it to you. Jesus went up the mountain and summoned those whom he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, that they might be with him. Key line, with him. He shares authority. And he might send them forth to do what? To preach the authoritative teaching of the church. Get it? And to have authority to drive out demons, the sacraments, to make whole through sacraments and teaching that which is disparate and self-destructive. See? He appointed the 12, Simon, whom he named Peter, James, son of Zebedee, John, the brother of James, whom he called Boanerges, I don't know how to say that name. That is, sons of thunder. They must have been something else. And look at how he listened. Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanian, Judas the Iscariot, the betrayer, the double-crosser. You see, they're ordinary men. Not innocent. Look at Judas. Anything but innocent. But ordinary, and they are the rock upon which the church is built. The church is built on ordinary people whose wisdom comes from above through the church, even through the terrible fleshiness of the church, in a sense, terrifying sense. We really can be sinful, but protected and always preaching the true gospel. And the sacraments, no matter what, the state of the preacher, the priest, the bishop, the sacraments are valid. That doesn't make any difference when I say Mass, if I'm in a state of sin or not, that sacrament's valid. You receive the Eucharist, the Eucharist is valid. It's the body and blood of Christ. It's irrespective of the holiness or non-holiness, the sinfulness or innocence of the pastor. Makes no difference, the priest. Okay? God works through us, and his authority lies within us. In the authority, the magisterial authority of the church. I believe that. I absolutely trust and believe it. That's the truth. That's why I think Catholicism has survived so long, is because of the rock upon which it's built. Peter, the authority of the church. Yet not its innocence. Not innocent. Not at all. We are holy, but not innocent. Holiness is to be in the state of redemption and in need of redemption. Not innocence. There is no such thing. Even babies are born with original sin. And according to one guy that I know in the order, Father Nick, he had a way of really summarizing it. Nick Zetz, he had a way of summarizing everything with brilliance. He was one of the best preachers I ever heard. He announced one time 50 years ago, and I was in the retreat house with him in Baltimore. He announced that Italians like me are born with 15 years experience. So I remember that line. Italians are born with 15 years. He was telling the retreatants they could go to confession to me. I wasn't naive, as much as I was just freshly ordained. I still had 15 years experience on me. That's a great line. We're not innocent, but we are instruments of the church and instruments of the gospel. And Christ has protected us through the Holy Spirit. The church has flourished all these centuries, even despite the sinfulness of her members, especially in the hierarchy. Back in the 60s during the council, I remember how shaken I was by it all. I asked Father John Joe Reardon in our monastery in Jamaica, would the church survive? And he said if he could survive the Renaissance, he could survive anything. And he was right. He was right. He knew history. The church doesn't thrive on innocence but on holiness, and the holiness of God himself through the Holy Spirit, the feminine principle in our lives, in the life of the church. The church has never preached a false gospel or a false sacrament, used a false sacrament. She has not. No matter what our innocence or guilt, makes no difference. The sacraments are valid and the teachings of the church are absolute. She has never betrayed the gospel of Christ. Never. You see? That's the church. A church built on ordinary men. Ordinary. How much more ordinary can you get? St. Peter, for instance. He's a fisherman, professional fisherman, businessman. These are ordinary guys. I don't know about John and James. They seem to be a notch above. They seem to have something very special. The other guys are absolutely ordinary. But by God, they gave us the church. They are the foundation of the church. And they gave us 2,000 years later. We still are based on them, their witness, and who and what was Christ, and they died for it. See? That's the truth. That is the truth. It's the life of the faith, the life of the church. See? I got to tell you a true story, though. I don't know. I might have said this to you before, but when I got confirmed I guess I was 12 or 13 when I got confirmed, I took the name Peter. The reason is not because my grandfather was Peter, Pietro, or my brother was Peter, but because I thought it would help me with my fishing. Let me assure you, it didn't help at all. I still couldn't catch a trout to save my life, okay? But I thought it would help. So tagged on to my name is my Theodore, which I chose when I entered the Passionists, Raymond, my baptismal name, Tarquinio, my middle name named after my father, Peter, because it's my confirmation name, hoping it'd help me catch fish, which it never did, and then Vitali, who the narrative of who I am, where I came from, the Vitali narrative. You want to know me, you got to see it all, including my little taste of superstition that maybe if I took Peter, the name Peter, it would help me catch fish. It didn't. I was 12 years old. What do you figure out? An Italian kid? Are you kidding me? We're playing all the angles. We invented these angles. Anyway, hey, look, if Peter wasn't that good either, to tell you the truth. It took a couple of miracles for him to catch fish. Well, it took a lot of miracles for me to catch fish. Whatever. Just want to tell you the story. I love the church. I love her ordinariness. And if anything I've learned pastorally in the last 50 years of St. Timothy's and St. Mark's Parish here in St. Louis and Afton, is the holiness of the ordinary. That's the lesson I learned. Every day I saw ordinary people believing in extraordinary circumstances. I've seen the holiness of the church in the flesh of the church. Not the pastors alone, by far. Not the hierarchy, and certainly not in myself. I saw it in the life of the faithful. Parents raising their families, spouses loving each other as best they can, often picking up the pieces. And then along the way, I've seen people love despite the rejection they felt in their lives, remaining faithful even despite the infidelity of the spouse. That's a true story. I saw holiness. I saw love, not in the books, not some pious story that was written by a hagiographer, but in the reality of flesh and blood in which I was engaged. I saw it. I owe a great deal to St. Timothy's and St. Mark's, the parish, of which I've only been part-time, whatever you want to call it, for 50 years. But in that pastoral experience, I learned who and what was the church. I learned the church up close and personal. And it all had faces and names and last names and kids on the ball field. And it was in the death and the dying, in the hospice, in the hospitals, in divorces and remarriage, counseling. And the human adventure. I saw the holiness of the adventure itself. I saw the 12 apostles, the ordinary people, doing extraordinary things in the name of God and Christ, in the name of their own humanity. I saw what holiness really was. I stopped reading the lives of the saints when I was a novice. They were too trumped up, phony stories. I knew that if you want to see what holiness is, it's right around you. Just look. Let it touch you. You'll see it. And I've seen it in the order, and I saw it, and I still see it at St. Mark's. That's a true story. That's the truth. I hope I imparted that. I hope I have witnessed to them the same holiness that they have witnessed to me.